Nolan Grant didn't do dinner at cheap bistros, not on a Friday night and not in black dress shoes that cost more than most people's rent. Yet here he was, standing outside a dimly lit corner restaurant in Brooklyn, eyeing the flickering neon sign that reads Sorella's with a look of disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath, pulling out his phone only to remember he wasn't texting. He'd already called twice. His friend Anthony had bailed last minute. Something came up, Anthony had said. Nolan didn't press, he rarely did, he just didn't like his time wasted. He looked around, debating whether to get back in the black car idling at the curb and head to Manhattan. But then the door opened, and the scent of garlic, basil, and something warm and buttery hit him in the face. A voice followed. "You coming in or just here to judge the sign?" Nolan looked up. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed lightly, one brow raised, a black apron tied around her waist, a small pad of paper in her hand, and a pen tucked behind her ear. She wasn't wearing makeup, at least not much. Her hair was tied back, a few loose curls falling around her face. She looked like she hadn't had a break in hours, and also like she didn't care what he thought. "Depends," Nolan replied, his tone dry. "You serving actual food in there or just attitude?" She didn't laugh, but her lips twitched. "We've got both, but the lasagna will change your life." "I highly doubt that." "Then prove me wrong," she said, stepping aside. He shouldn't have walked in. He had a penthouse fridge stocked with imported wine and a chef on standby. But something about the challenge in her voice, the way she didn't fawn over the expensive coat he hadn't taken off yet, that made him curious. He followed her inside. The place was cozy, with mismatched chairs, flickering candlelight, and the low hum of Sinatra floating through a speaker somewhere. The tables were mostly full. She led him to a small two-top near the back. "You waiting on someone?" she asked. "Not anymore," she nodded, jotting something down. "I'll bring you a menu." He watched her walk away, confident but not trying too hard. She moved like she belonged there. Like she had better things to do than impress anyone. He stayed. 20 minutes later, he was halfway through a plate of lasagna that was, to his annoyance, ridiculously good. "Don't tell me," the hostess said, reappearing beside his table. "Changed your life." "I wouldn't go that far, but it's not garbage. It's edible," he said, meeting her eyes. She leaned a bit closer. "You're welcome." "What's your name?" "Savannah Vance." "Nolan." "I didn't ask," he laughed, actually laughed. He hadn't done that in a while, not genuinely. "You always this charming to your guests, only the ones who look like they accidentally took a wrong turn out of the Upper East Side." "Guilty." She tilted her head. "So what are you doing here, Nolan?" "My friend bailed on dinner plans." This was his pick. Lucky me. He didn't miss the flicker of something in her eyes when she said that. Not flirtation, but maybe surprise, like she hadn't expected him to stay or care. "I'll take the check," he said. "No rush. Desserts on the house." He paused. "Why?" she shrugged. "Because you didn't leave." He stayed for tiramisu and a coffee he didn't need. She checked on him twice more, each time lingering just a little longer. And when he finally stood to leave, she handed him his receipt with a smile. On the back of it, written in pen, "You should come back when you're not wearing a tie." He looked up. She was already walking away. That night, Nolan didn't go to the club like he usually did. He didn't call someone from his contact list to meet for drinks. He went home, poured a scotch, and thought about a girl who wore sneakers with her apron and teased him like she hadn't grown up watching men like him on TV. The next night, he was back at Sorella's. Savannah blinked when she saw him. "You lost again. Apparently I like punishment. I hope you're not expecting another free dessert." "I'm here for the lasagna," he said, "and the attitude." She crossed her arms. "I'm not your waitress tonight. Then I guess I'll need a hostess to keep me company." She stared at him for a second too long. Then, to his surprise, she pulled out a chair across from his and sat down. "You always crash restaurants uninvited. You always sit with strangers during your shift." "You're not a stranger," she said. "You're the guy who thinks he's too good for lasagna," he grinned. "Touché." He stayed for 2 hours that night. They talked about nothing, everything. He learned she was 28, had helped her mom open the restaurant after her dad passed. She never went to college, never wanted to. She liked working. She liked people. She liked real things. He didn't tell her how much money he had. Or the fact that his last date was with a model who flew in from Paris. He didn't mention the penthouse, the sports car, or the fact that he owned part of a tech company that had just gone public. He just listened. And when he left that night, she called after him. Same time tomorrow. He didn't answer. But he showed up anyway. By the fourth night, she didn't hand him a menu. By the fifth, she brought him a beer instead of wine. By the sixth, she sat with him before he even ordered. On the seventh night, she asked, "So, you gonna tell me what you actually do?" He leaned back in his chair. "You really want to know?" "I do. I own a few companies, real estate, tech, boring stuff." She narrowed her eyes. "You're rich, aren't you?" "I do okay," she laughed. "You're a millionaire." "Technically," she stared at him. "You've been eating lasagna in my bistro for a week and didn't think to mention that." "I liked being just Nolan." She didn't say anything for a minute. Then, just Nolan. "You're buying me dinner tomorrow. You work tomorrow." "Not anymore," she said. "I just swapped shifts." He looked at her like she'd just punched him in the gut in the best way. "Dinner," she repeated. "And not here." He stood. "Anywhere you want," she smiled. "Don't wear a tie." He didn't. Savannah stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, her elbows resting lightly on the stone parapet as the city glimmered below. The lights of downtown Manhattan blinked like a constellation made just for them, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. The air was warmer than expected, the breeze soft against her skin. She turned when she heard footsteps behind her. "Not bad," she said, eyeing the linen-draped table set for two, surrounded by flickering lanterns and vases of white peonies. "You set all this up?" "I made a few calls," Nolan replied, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. No jacket, no tie, just a crisp, open-collared button-down and charcoal trousers that looked like they'd been tailored this morning. Savannah arched a brow. "I was expecting a restaurant. You said not here, you didn't say where." He paused. "This building's mine." She blinked. "You live here, I own it." She turned back to the view. "Of course you do." He stepped beside her. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Just adjusting." "To what?" "To the fact that I'm standing on a rooftop garden in Tribeca with a man who casually owns skyscrapers." "I figured you'd hate it." "I don't hate it," she said, her voice quiet. "I just didn't know I was walking into a movie set." He handed her a glass of wine. "I can cancel dessert if it comes with a string quartet." She laughed, and it was the first time he saw her guard drop. "Don't you dare. If there's creme brulee coming, I want it." They sat, and he poured her a second glass without asking. She didn't stop him. "So," she said, picking at the bread basket, "you're some kind of real estate mogul." "You could say that. I started in property development, flipped a few buildings, invested in the right areas. And now you have rooftop gardens and private chefs. I don't use them often." "I prefer lasagna, remember?" She gave him a look. "You know what I mean." "I do," Nolan said. "And I get it. This isn't your world." She leaned back in her chair. "That's not the problem. I just don't like surprises." "I wasn't hiding it. You weren't exactly advertising it either." He paused, studying her carefully. "Would you have talked to me if I had?" She didn't answer right away. "Probably, but I would have been more careful." "With what?" She met his eyes. "With how much I liked you." He didn't flinch. "I didn't expect to like you either." The waiter appeared quietly, placing their plates down with practiced grace. Seared sea bass for her, filet mignon for him. Nolan thanked him with a nod, then turned back to her. "Tell me something I don't know about you," he said. Savannah cut into her fish. "I used to want to be a travel photographer." "Why didn't you?" "My mom got sick. I stayed." She didn't elaborate. He didn't press. "Do you still take photos?" "Sometimes. I've got a Nikon that lives in my closet. Comes out on Sundays mostly." "What do you shoot?" "People, strangers. I like catching them when they don't know anyone's watching." "You should show me sometime." "Maybe." She looked at him. "Tell me something about you." "I hate flying." "What? Ironic, right?" he said. "I have access to jets and I'd rather drive 5 hours than get on a plane." She leaned in. "Why?" "My father died in a crash," he said simply, her voice softened. "That's awful. He was a commercial pilot, bad weather. Nothing anyone could have done." She reached across the table, resting her fingers lightly on his. "I'm sorry." He didn't pull back. "It was a long time ago, but I never got over it." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of mutual understanding settling between them. She finally smiled. "You're not as put together as you look, are you?" not even close. That's oddly comforting, he chuckled. You thought I had it all figured out, you dress like you do. Clothes are easy, vulnerability not so much, she tilted her head. You're doing okay with it now, his thumb brushed hers. That's because you don't look at me like everyone else does, and how's that, like you see the man, not the account. The evening stretched on. Dessert came no quartet, just warm chocolate soufflé and espresso. She stole a bite of his. He didn't complain. As they stood at the elevator later, she hesitated. I had a good time, she said. So did I. She glanced up at him. Do you do this a lot? He shook his head. Not with anyone who matters. She bit her lip. You're dangerous. In what way? I could fall for you. He stepped closer, his voice lower now. Then don't hold back. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, looked up at him one last time. Call me tomorrow, but no surprises, he nodded. Only the good kind. The doors closed. Nolan didn't move for a full minute. Then he walked back toward the rooftop, loosened the top button of his shirt, and stared out over the city like it might finally give him an answer. He wasn't used to uncertainty. But with Savannah, nothing felt predictable. And that was exactly why he couldn't stop thinking about her. The bell above the door jingled as Savannah stepped into the sunlit cafe on the Lower East Side, her hair still damp from the morning rain. She glanced around until she spotted Nolan at a corner table, already halfway through a cappuccino. He looked up from a folded newspaper, his sleeves rolled up, his watch catching a stray beam of light. You're early, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. You're late. She peeled off her coat and shook her head. The train stalled. Some guy dropped his phone on the tracks. You okay? Fine, just mildly caffeinated and extremely annoyed. You'll feel better once you try the croissants here. They fly them in from Marseille, she blinked. You're kidding. I'm not. Do you ever just eat a bagel like the rest of us? He offered a lopsided grin. Not if I can help it. She picked up one of the flaky pastries and took a bite. Okay, that's ridiculous. Told you. They ate in relative silence for a few moments, the low hum of conversation around them blending into a comfortable background. It wasn't their usual setting, no candlelight, no skyline, but it felt strangely more intimate. So, what's the occasion? She asked. You don't usually ask me to breakfast. I wanted to talk to you before your shift, her brow arched. That sounds ominous. It's not, he said, but it might be important. She set her pastry down, brushing crumbs from her fingers. All right. I'm listening. He hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. I'm leaving town for a few days. Business? Okay, I want you to come with me. Savannah blinked. To where? Chicago, she leaned back. You're serious? There's a gala for a housing initiative I'm funding. We're launching a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs. I'll be speaking. And you want me there. Why? Because I want you there, not as a date, as someone who matters to me. She looked away, her fingers curling around her coffee cup. Do you think I belong at something like that? Do you? I don't know, she admitted. I've never owned anything that costs more than a month's rent. Neither did I once. She gave him a long look. What would I even do there? Be yourself. That's more than enough. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she traced the rim of her cup, her silence more thoughtful than hesitant. How long would we be gone? She asked eventually. 3 days, 2 nights, private jet, hotel suite, black tie event. But we'll have time to ourselves too. And you're sure this isn't some sort of test? I'm not trying to impress anyone, Savannah. I just want you to see more of my world, and I want to see how it fits with yours. She gave a slow nod. All right, I'll go, he exhaled, clearly relieved. Good, but I'm not wearing anything ridiculous. You'll pick what you want, I'll cover it. She narrowed her eyes. No price tags. No arguments. That night, she stood in front of her bedroom mirror, holding up a silky navy gown she'd tried on that afternoon. It wasn't her usual style, more elegant than anything she'd ever worn, but it felt strangely right. The boutique had been tucked into a quiet block off Fifth Avenue, and the attendant hadn't blinked when Nolan had handed over his card without a glance at the total. She didn't like being taken care of. But she hadn't felt bought. That mattered. 2 days later, the jet touched down just outside Chicago, and Savannah stepped into a black SUV that whisked them to the hotel. The suite was absurd floor-to-ceiling windows, a grand piano in the corner, a view of the river that looked like a postcard. She wandered into the sitting area, brushing her fingers over the marble-topped bar. "You all right?" Nolan asked, setting their luggage down. "I don't know what to do with my hands," he chuckled. "That's normal." "Is it?" He came up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "You don't have to prove anything here." "I'm not worried about them," she said, turning to face him. "I'm worried about you." "What about me?" "That I'll embarrass you." He touched her cheek, gentle. "You couldn't if you tried." Later that evening, Savannah emerged from the bedroom dressed in the gown. Her hair was swept up, her earrings subtle, her makeup soft but striking. Nolan, waiting by the window in a dark tailored suit, looked up and went still. "You look." He trailed off, then tried again. "I don't have a word for it." "Good," she said, "because anything too poetic would make me suspicious." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The ballroom was all chandeliers and gold trim, a sea of glittering gowns and polished shoes. Waiters glided between guests with trays of champagne. A jazz trio played near the far wall. Nolan's world, Savannah realized, moved with quiet confidence. No one rushed, no one stumbled. Every smile was calculated, every compliment rehearsed. She held tighter to his arm. "Relax," he whispered. "You belong here." "I feel like I borrowed someone else's life." He turned to her. "Then let's make it yours." They mingled. He introduced her to CEOs and philanthropists, each greeting her with polite curiosity. She answered questions about the restaurant, about her photography, even deflected a few not-so-subtle probes about their relationship. At one point, she slipped away to the balcony for air. Nolan followed a moment later. "Too much?" he asked. "No," she said, "just a lot." He leaned on the railing beside her. "You're doing great. I'm not trying to impress them, I know. I'm trying not to lose myself in all this." "You won't," he said, "because I won't let you." She turned to face him. "Why me, Nolan?" "You could have anyone in this crowd." "I've had people like them," he said. "They vanish the moment things stop being perfect. You're the first person who stayed even when I wasn't trying." She touched his lapel, her fingers stilling over his heart. "I didn't expect this." "Neither did I." From inside, someone called his name. The program was about to begin. He kissed her forehead, then slipped back through the doors. Savannah stayed outside a moment longer, the sound of applause rising behind her. She wasn't sure what this was becoming. But she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't afraid anymore. Savannah adjusted the strap of her leather carry-on as the plane descended, the Chicago skyline shrinking beneath the clouds. She glanced sideways at Nolan, who had barely spoken since takeoff. He wasn't tense, at least not in the way she'd expected. His fingers were relaxed on the armrest, but his gaze was distant, locked on something only he could see. "You already back in work mode?" she asked, nudging his elbow gently. "No," he said without looking at her. "Just thinking." "Dangerous." He finally turned to her. "I want to tell you something, and I don't want it to feel like I waited for the right setting or some perfect moment. It just needs to be said." She leaned back, folding her arms. "All right. I've been chasing the wrong kind of permanence for years. Buildings, contracts, investments, things that don't leave, things that don't change." He paused, searching her eyes. "You're not permanent, you're real, you can walk away. And that used to scare me. And now I understand that if you choose to stay, it means something, it means everything." The wheels touched down with a jolt, but she didn't look away from him. "I haven't decided yet," she said softly. "But I haven't run." That night, back in New York, Savannah stepped into her apartment and dropped her bag by the door. The familiar creak of the floorboard at the entry reminded her where she was not on a rooftop with city views or a ballroom with chandeliers. Just her little one-bedroom above a bookstore where the radiator hissed louder than the TV and the faucet squealed every time she turned it on. She didn't call Nolan. She let 3 days pass. On the 4th, she opened the restaurant early to prep for the dinner rush. She tied her apron, rolled up her sleeves, and tried to ignore how quiet the place felt without him sitting in the corner booth. At noon, her mother poked her head in from the kitchen. "There's a man standing outside with a box. He looks nervous." Savannah wiped her hands on a towel. "Tell him I'm not interested unless it's pizza." "He's wearing a suit." That got her attention. She stepped out front and saw Nolan standing on the sidewalk, holding a large, flat box wrapped in brown paper. He looked up. "I didn't know your shift started early today," he said. "You didn't call?" "You didn't either," she crossed her arms. "So what's this?" He held out the box. "Open it." She hesitated, then untied the twine and peeled the paper back. Inside was a black matte frame, simple, elegant. Behind the glass was a photograph, her photograph. It was the shot she'd taken in Chicago, the one she hadn't told him about. A side profile of him on the balcony, the city behind him blurred in soft light, his expression unguarded, her voice caught. "How did you get this?" "You left your camera on the table. I had it developed." He paused. "I wanted to see how you see me." She looked up at him. "This is personal, so are you." They stood in silence for a heartbeat. "I don't need a rooftop," he said, "or a gala or imported croissants. I need you to know that I'm not playing. I didn't expect this, but I'm not walking away from it. You're not exactly easy to integrate into a normal life." "I don't want normal, I want what we are." She stared at the photo in her hands. "You're just going to wait out here until I say something, until you say yes." "To what?" He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a key. "To moving in with me." Her brows lifted. "Excuse me, not today, not tomorrow, but when you're ready. I don't want you to feel like I'm offering you a castle. I'm offering you a place to belong." She blinked. "This isn't a proposal." "No, not yet. That will come later." "Confident, are you?" "Terrified, but betting on you." She looked down at the key in his palm, still resting in his open hand. Then she looked back up. "You're insane." "I've been called worse." She took the key, the corner of his mouth lifted. "But," she said quickly, "you're going to have to earn the rest." "I plan to." The next morning, Savannah unlocked the front door of Sorella's, humming under her breath. She hadn't told anyone yet, not her mother, not her coworkers, but something had shifted. Later that week, Nolan showed up unannounced with a tray of coffee and a new camera strap. "I figured yours was due for an upgrade," he said. She accepted it with a raised brow. "You're bribing me with accessories now. I'm investing in your art." That night after closing, she found an envelope taped to the register. Inside was a single plane ticket dated 2 months from now. Destination, Florence, no name, no note. She walked out front, found him leaning against the hood of his car. "Explain." "I booked a trip," he said. "For when you're ready to shoot somewhere new. You're assuming I'll say yes by then." "I'm hopeful." She stepped closer. "You're ridiculous." "I'm yours." She kissed him. Not urgently, not dramatically, just enough to say, "I'm not running." When she pulled back, she whispered, "Let's see where this goes." He didn't answer. He just took her hand and held it like it was the most natural thing in the world, and for the first time in a long time it was. Savannah stood barefoot in Nolan's kitchen, a thin wisp of steam rising from her mug as morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows. The air smelled faintly of citrus and fresh linen, and the city below buzzed faintly through the glass. She leaned against the marble counter, watching him flip pancakes with an ease that made her tilt her head. "You cook now?" she asked, sipping slowly. He glanced back. "Don't sound so surprised. I just can't picture you grocery shopping." "I had them delivered," she grinned. "There it is." He plated the pancakes and set them in front of her with a bowl of blueberries. "I told you this place is yours too. You shouldn't have to do everything." "I'm not used to this." She picked up her fork. "Waking up in a place that isn't falling apart. I like having you here." He paused before grabbing a chair across from her. "I meant what I said. I don't want this to be temporary." She studied him. "It doesn't feel temporary." "But I still haven't decided about Florence." "I know. I want to go, but not as a passenger on your private jet while you handle things. If I go, I want it to be mine too. I want to build something, not follow." He leaned forward. "Then let's build something in Italy, anywhere. But if Florence is where you want to start, I'll meet you there." She looked down at her plate, then back up. "You'd let me go on my own, if that's what you need." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I don't want to go without you. I just needed to know you'd let me be me. I wouldn't want you any other way." That afternoon, they stopped by Sorella's to help Savannah's mom reorganize the back storage room. The restaurant was closed for the day, and the place felt different without the usual clatter of dishes and conversation. Her mother was wiping down the counter when she glanced up. "You're happier," she said without preamble. Savannah turned, surprised. You think so? I know so. Her mother dried her hands and looked between the two of them. I've seen you with people before, but this is the first time someone's let you breathe. Nolan didn't say anything, just slipped his arm around Savannah's waist and let her lean into him. Her mother smiled faintly, then turned back to the kitchen without another word. Later, back at Nolan's building, they took the elevator to the rooftop not for an event, not to impress anyone, just to sit. Savannah curled her legs beneath her on one of the cushioned benches and watched the skyline blink to life. He handed her a glass of water and sat beside her. I talked to my board today, he said. Told them I'll be working remotely for a while. She raised her eyebrows. Turns out they've been waiting for me to take a step back. Let me guess, they're scared of you, they respect me, and they know I don't bluff. She tilted her head. What changed? He looked at her then, really looked. I've spent years building an empire. But I never built a life, not really. It all looked good from the outside, but none of it meant anything until you walked into that restaurant and served me lasagna like it was a middle finger. She laughed, resting her head against his shoulder. I'm thinking of turning the upstairs storage room into a photo studio, she said. I want to offer portraits, real ones, not the posed kind. Do it. And I want to bring in a rotating gallery, feature new photographers every month. People who don't have access to traditional spaces. I'll fund the build-out. No, he blinked. No, I want to do this myself. If I fail, I want it to be mine. And if I succeed, I need to know I earned it. He nodded slowly. Then I'll be your first client, full price. She lifted her head. You'd pay me to take your picture. I'd pay anything to see how you see me. The words settled between them, quiet and solid. She turned, kissed him once soft, certain. I love you, she said. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. I've loved you since you told me my attitude couldn't handle your lasagna. She laughed against his chest. That's not how that went. Close enough. That weekend they packed, not just for Florence, but for something bigger. Savannah moved out of her apartment, donating most of what she didn't need. Nolan cleared a room in his penthouse for her studio equipment. He installed blackout shades and adjustable lighting without asking, just left a note on the door that read, Your space. No rules. The last thing she packed was her camera. 2 months later, they stood outside a converted gallery in Florence, the air sweet with the scent of old stone and espresso. Inside, her first international show was about to open. She wore a flowing white dress and held Nolan's hand as if it were the only thing tethering her to the ground. He didn't let go. The gallery buzzed with early guests, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were on the wall where a single portrait hung center stage. It was a black and white shot of him, taken months earlier in her mother's kitchen. He was laughing, mid-motion, reaching for something just out of frame. The light had caught his eyes in a way she hadn't seen since. You never told me you printed that one, he said softly. I wanted people to see the version of you that makes pancakes. He kissed her temple. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never stop seeing him. That night, after the gallery emptied and the wine glasses had been cleared, they walked back to their shared apartment above a flower shop. The city was quiet, and she could hear the river from 2 blocks away. At the door, he paused. I have one more surprise. She narrowed her eyes. I told you no more surprises. This one's different. He opened the door and she stepped inside. There, on the table, sat a small black box. She looked at it, then at him. You're proposing in the middle of an art show after party. He stepped closer. I'm proposing in the middle of our real life. She opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a tiny sapphire nestled beside the diamond. She didn't answer with words. She kissed him once, then again, then nodded, barely able to breathe. Yes, he smiled, hands on her waist. I'll take that as a yes. They didn't rush the wedding, they planned it slowly, intentionally. 1 year later, on the lawn of a vineyard in Tuscany, under strings of golden lights and the soft hum of cello music, Savannah walked barefoot down the aisle toward Nolan Grant. She didn't trip, she didn't cry, she just smiled wide, wild, and real. Because she had built something. Because they had found something. And this time it was permanent. They danced under the stars, the music fading into laughter, her dress brushing the grass, his hand steady on her back. No titles, no pretense, just a woman who never planned on falling in love with a millionaire. And a man who had everything until he met the one thing he never knew he needed.